guys, I just want to make sure. There we go. We want to make sure if anybody couldn't make it to this tonight that we could record it and share it with them. Sorry, I just remembered that I had paused the recording a minute ago. Also, I just want to make sure we're kind of sharing one microphone. And will you guys give me a thumbs up if you could hear Mrs. James clearly in that part before?
Great.
Okay, just want to make sure because we've got just my microphone, so we want to just make sure that you guys were hearing us okay. All right, great. All right, next slide. Let's see. All right, so as we're getting started here tonight, there are a couple of definitions that you really need to know and kind of understand as we're going through things tonight. So number one is fluency. Fluency basically describes the speed and accuracy with which you read. Okay, so we're reading along. Can you decode those words? You're going pretty smoothly. You're not kind of stumbling over each word as you go. Comprehension. Comprehension means the ability to understand what you have read. And we've got phonological awareness. And I will tell you that even I will make the mistake often of kind of confusing phonics and phonological awareness. You may hear people sometimes interchange those two. So we want to kind of try to make sure that we clearly explain what those two things are. So phonological awareness is understanding of the sounds that the letters make when they are spoken. And this includes the ability to change those sounds around, to make new words, and then identify nonsense words and rhyming words. And we'll talk some more a little bit about that. Then phonics is our next word that we want to make sure that we understand. And that's the correspondence between looking at that printed letter, which is also called a grapheme, and the sounds that they make, which is called a phoneme. All right. And then sometimes you might hear people say SSP or structured synthetic phonics. And these are programs like we use, like Foundations, and they include skills that are presented in a sequential way rather than teaching them as children happen upon them in books. And this method has been proven over and over to be the best way to teach children to read. I will tell you that prior to Mrs. James and I really looking into this and in our very beginning starts of teaching reading, I won't say that's kind of what we did. That was the material that we had here at school, the curriculum that we were provided. It felt like it was a lot more sort of haphazard or a little less structured. And that's why we love the way that we're doing this now with Foundations, is because it is so structured and it is so systematic in explaining it.
And we've been doing it for several years now. And we're really in the groove of it. And we've seen year after year after year that it does wonders for how children learn to read.
It's amazingly different compared to what we were doing and the progress and the gain of knowledge that the children demonstrate in teaching it this way. And then the next one is knowledge-based curriculum. And this is something that's kind of new for us that we're really excited about. So knowledge-based curriculum puts the emphasis on building a base of general knowledge, especially in science and social studies. So, all right, let's take a look at our next slide here.
So we'll start with phonological awareness. And we've really started making this a focus of our day, every day in kindergarten and first grade. We use a program called Heggerty, which is new and new to us. And it's funny to watch the kids do it because at the beginning they were like, what are you talking about? And now they've got it, no problem. Phonological awareness is the building block of reading that happens before, it happens when they're babies and toddlers and preschoolers. And it's the ability to listen and hear the different sounds and manipulate them. It's knowing that cat is made up of the sounds k, a, and t. And it's not necessarily a natural thing that you do. It's something that we need to expose them to over and over and over. So phonemes are the smallest unit of speech. A phoneme could be a or b or sh, things like that. So this means hearing k, a, t, knowing that you put it together to make cat. Knowing that you hear cat, and you can break it down into k, a, t. We do lots and lots of work with rhyming. And I think it's really interesting. You assume everybody can rhyme. No,
you assume.
and I will tell you that you'll never see this. I took this curriculum home over the summer and I gave my husband some of these lessons and he said, what are you talking about? And he struggled with it at first until we went through it more. So being able to rhyme, fun, run, sun, ton, to know the difference between rhyme and alliteration, which young children really struggle with. If I say, I'm going to tell you 3 words, one word doesn't rhyme. Fox, box, bat. A lot of them will say fox because they're listening to that beginning sound. We do word chains where we say fish. Now take away f and change it to w, wish. Take away w, change it to d, dish. Say dish. Take away I, change it to a, dash. Ooh, that's a tricky one. But they're so good at it now. At the beginning of the year was a struggle. It is so easy. And now when we take that, all of that is done without seeing any letters. Now, when we take that and apply it to phonics, it used to be the unit on blends took forever. It's nothing. It's so easy for them now because they hear those sounds. We've worked on it so much. The primary age for acquiring these skills is 2 to 5. Preschool, kindergarten, really important time for that. And they should be really solid by the end of first grade.
All right. All right. So then the next thing is phonological awareness. So strong readers have really strong phonological awareness skills. And what
I did some of your
that's
stuff.
okay. That's all right. And what do we do to teach this? Like she said, we do the rhyming words. We do tapping out words. And so if you've got a kid in kindergarten right now, hopefully they are coming home and they are just trying to tap out every word possible. But that's what we're working on, is tapping out words. So you'll see them when we do elbows up. And so if we're going to say the word cat, we're going k, ah, t, and then we go cat, and we're blending it together. But it's trying to make them, it's a physical way to kind of denote that there's a sound for each of those. But then also it's just trying to connect that this is a sound and this is a sound and this is a sound, and how many sounds are there. So I think that really, it was amazing when I started seeing that difference of tapping things out and how kids were able to pick those things up in trying to learn to read. And then, as Mrs. James was saying before, deleting phonemes. So say crush, now say crush without the k, and it's just rush. Substituting phonemes. So that's bat, change the b to and make mat. Again, what she was saying before, isolating some of those sounds, beginning, middle, and end, and trying to figure out what is the beginning sound, what's the middle sound, what's the ending sound. Taking away or segmenting syllables and adding syllables. And then onset means, that sound that we hear at the beginning or the rhyme. So all of these are things that we're teaching in phonological awareness. But you might say, okay, well, you guys are doing that at school. What can I do at home to work on my child and help my child with this? Well, that's where this is your part. So sounds crazy. Talk to your child. Talk to your child. You can't overestimate just having conversations with them, but being silly. Read with your child. Break out those Dr. Seuss books. And when there's alliteration, let's think about, what do all these words start? Look at all these words start with B, and what do all these words? They rhyme. I've got sat, fat, mat, bat. Can you think of another word that rhymes with that? Play games in your car. I know that sounds crazy, especially these days, maybe because of COVID. I'm hoping maybe people are taking more road trips rather than maybe flying. If you're driving in the car, play those games. I Spy, or, let's make as many rhyming words as we can, even to do something. I know, we used to play, I'm going on a trip and I'm taking a blank with me, and then you have to, something for each letter. Those silly games that we did when we were kids, before everybody had an iPad or a computer in their car or a TV. Those are the opportunities that you have as a parent to start building some of those building blocks for us that will help us when your child gets here. So, and I'm sorry, Mrs. James, I'm going to forward it there.
So part of what we do in our phonics program in Foundations is handwriting. And I know that there are a lot of school systems around the country who said, you know what, we don't have time for handwriting. And not long after that, they said, you know what, we need to make time for handwriting because it is vitally important. There's such a strong link between proper letter formation and letter recognition. And what we're talking about, and I have a picture of a stove here, and I'll get to that in a minute, is children need to be automatic with recognizing letters and writing letters. When it gets to writing words, there is not time to stop and think, what does that look like? How does it go? Let me look at the letter chart. You're going to forget the words you're writing. It needs to be muscle memory. And in fact, in first grade, after we write it so many times, we write it with our eyes closed. And I guarantee you that is the most exciting part of our entire day. But this applies to both reading and writing. Children need to be able to see a letter, name it quickly, hear a letter, write it quickly. And a few years ago, we were able to go and see Dr. William Van Cleve, and he is really an expert in this. We were at the Hill Center. And they also, if you ever get a chance, have wonderful parent seminars too. But he talked about your brain as being a stove. You've got your front burners and your back burners. And the stuff in the front burners, you're doing stuff with that. The stuff in the back burners is just sitting there bubbling away. You only have 2 front burners. If your front burners are concerned with what does the letter F look like? Does it go this way or this way? You've used up your front burners. That needs to be back burner stuff. You have an unlimited number of back burners and you can just have all that working away. You need to be thinking about, is this the word I want in this sentence? In kindergarten, do I have enough space between my letters? Things like that. So we're going to take what can be automatic and make it automatic, and handwriting is one of those things.
All right, let's see here. All right. So another thing that we want to, let me just ask Mr. James, do we have a place where we're going to talk to them about that, about formation? Okay. I just want to double check, make sure we didn't skip over that. All right. So vocabulary. So this is something I love this. We're getting so excited about what we're doing with this year. But vocabulary, the number one indicator for success in 11th grade, which that's the year my son is, and it's not an easy year, people, let me tell you. This is SAT, ACT year. Woo. And so the number one indicator for success in 11th grade is the size of your child's vocabulary in first grade. There are 3 different kinds of tiers of vocabulary words. So tier 1 is those really easy sight words, easy basic words. Tier 2 is your uncommon, uninteresting, but difficult words. Things like linger, side, stingy, weary. These words are not easy to figure out when you're reading and like you've got those context clues. You know, you can read and read and read, but if you don't know what those words mean, you're probably not going to be able to figure it out from the words around it or from the pictures. And then, of course, our tier 3 words are what we call uncommon, but really interesting words. These are the words that the kids love. They've got these words like triceratops and bulldozer and caterpillar. These words help increase fluency and comprehension, all of these. And children need to learn lots and lots of tier 2 words. And so those are the words that we are working on right now. I'm just going to give you a small example. This week, we learned the word haste. That was one of our words that we learned. And so now every day when I ask them to do things, okay, boys and girls, do this quickly. They say, in haste. And I'm like, yes, in quickly. And so, or with haste. And so we've been, and it's so fun to see them as they learn a really uncommon word that if they had read that anywhere else, they would have no idea what that word meant. But now that they've got that word in their vocabulary, it is like, it's a fire word. Like they want to use it everywhere. They're so excited about it. So this is something really exciting that we've been trying to work on this year, is building that vocabulary and how much we're excited about how that's going to help their reading comprehension as we move forward.
And a lot of it, it's called, I don't know if I have this down here, academic vocabulary. A lot of these are words that you're just going to hear when you read. You're not going to use them, although we do. We use the word budge all the time in first grade because that was one of our words, but you're going to really encounter it when you're reading. And so that's what makes it so important. In kindergarten and first grade, you're going to learn vocabulary by listening to adults speak and read. And we do this through our language arts program. And it divides our year into units, and each unit focuses on a theme, particularly with science and social studies. So it lets us teach lots of science, lots of social studies mixed in with our language arts. And so what we do is we use read alouds to do this. And when we're doing these read alouds, we have them reading decodable books on their level. But when we do these read alouds are 2 to 3 grade levels above their reading level. So they're getting these words that are a little bit of a challenge, but we're talking about them. And so we use that for comprehension skills, vocabulary, story mapping, all of that we're doing with these books that are read to them. When you read an uncommon word, like, and this is from the book Corduroy, toppled,
which I read on the very first day of kindergarten.
Toppled, dashing, watchman. Ask your child what they think it means because it might surprise you. And there was a story that I read one year, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and this really kind of started us on this part of the journey. And there was a stingy woman in the story. And I thought, well, what do you think stingy means? And they said old. and they said ugly. Nobody said greedy. They didn't know. And had we not stopped, it changes the entire meaning of the story. And so then we started thinking, well, what other words don't they know? And we started asking more, and we were shocked by what words that we just assume they know and they don't. So then we define the word. We use it in a sentence. In first grade, we'll start learning a word of the day through our foundations, and they read the word and they spell it and create a dictionary entry for it. When children have a rich vocabulary and they're reading a book, if there's a difficult word like linger, once they can manage to decode it, they already know what it means. If they have to decode it and they still don't know what it means, you know, it's really not much help to them. You need to have strong decoding skills and strong language comprehension skills, vocabulary and comprehension together to be a fluent reader.
All right. All right. Is this me? I can't see my.
I don't know. It doesn't have one,
Okay.
but
All right. Well, we can.
it's kindergarten.
Yeah. So this is some of the examples of it's called CKLA, Core Knowledge, as this new program that we're using this year. And so these are some of the units and some of the vocabulary that goes along with it and what we've been doing. So far this year, we've done nursery rhymes and fairy tales. And you can see the words like violets, lane, nimble, and leap. The word lane, I thought for sure that they would know what that word is. Like, how do you not know, go down the lane? I had no clue what that word was. And so, you just take for granted sometimes that kids know these words and they don't. And so you think, gosh, here I am reading all these stories and it doesn't have the same meaning to them, because they don't really know what these words mean. The word leap, they did not know what that meant. I'm like, how do you not know what the word leap is? But they didn't. But now that we know the word leap, we have a video that we do that's a song and it says jump, jump, jump. No. In my class, we leap, leap, leap because they know that word now and they're excited about it. We've also done Native Americans. So we learned shelter and mischief and travois. We did Columbus and the Pilgrims and we learned separatist, journey, fascinated, colonial towns and townspeople. We're doing right now. This has been so interesting to me and to them. We've been learning miller, blacksmith, tailor, cobbler. We're getting ready to do presidents and American symbols, freedom, clever, general, plants, environment, nutrients, deciduous, pollination. So I'm not going to read all this to you, but you can see there's a great list of some really rich vocabulary words here that, you might not come across in your everyday conversation. But certainly if you're reading a book or even listening to a book and you don't know what these words are, it's going to change what you're able to take away from what you're hearing or what you're reading if you don't know the meaning of these words.
So these are some of our first grade units, and Budge was one that we learned. We read a fable about a dog who wouldn't budge. And I'm reading along and I think, wait a minute, what do you think budge means? They had no clue. So that totally changed the story. But we learned the word, and then for quite a while, we played Budge, Don't Budge, which is basically red light, green light, but budge, don't budge, budge, don't budge. And they use that word all the time. Determined, we just finished an astronomy unit that was fantastic, and we learned about the space race and when they found out that a Soviet, not an American, was the first one to get into space. Oh, devastating. But that's okay, because Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon and all was right again. But we talked about determined, and then we talked about what were you ever determined to do something? Then we wrote about that in our journals, and we talk about it first. We don't just go and write. We'll take turns saying the sentences back and forth, and then we write about it. So once they use that word in their writing, it seems to really stick in their memory. We're about to do animals and habitats, and we learn about the temperate deciduous forest. And they will say temperate deciduous forest a million times. They think it's the greatest words in the world. And we talk about deciduous plants being trees whose leaves change color in fall, and they're broadleaf trees. And we go out and we find deciduous leaves, and it really gives us a chance to have all this great science and social studies, but all this great reading that goes with it at the same time.
And I think we have a slide that we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but I think it's just, we're excited about this because, and I think pretty much any teacher on the planet would tell you, especially here in the United States, there's this huge focus on teaching reading. And because of that, there's no room to teach science and social studies. And so this is just exciting to be able to get to this. There is another slide. Mrs. James is warning me, wait to go
on. No, I was going to add to what you're
yeah,
saying.
gotcha. Okay,
I was talking to a child who was around middle school age. No, he was middle school age, almost high school age. And we had been doing our president's unit. And we talked about if you have a first grader or you had one, they know George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson are the first three presidents. And I'd said to him, I said, do you know the first three presidents? In fact, I said to the kids in class, I said, go home and ask your parents who the first three presidents are. And they'll know George Washington. And they all came back and said, yeah, but Siri told them the rest. And he knew George Washington. We didn't know the rest. I said, well, tell me this. How many colonies were there? How many original colonies? And he said, 2. Uh-oh. How many states are there? 53. So that, with this huge focus on reading and math, which are the big test areas particularly in public schools, you're tested on those areas. They became the huge focus. And there's a lot of research that's saying without the science and the social studies, you're not going to get the content knowledge. You're not going to get the vocabulary that you need to later go on and read more complex texts, because you need to have background knowledge in just a wide general area of knowledge. You need to have that in order to be able to read things as you go through high school and college.
All right. So the next part said that was a big focus on vocabulary. So we've really talked about phonological awareness and phonics. Then we talked about vocabulary. So now we're on to sight words. So sight word is any word that your child can read instantly. And we see 80% of all the words that we speak, hear, and read are about the same 200 words over and over. Some of these examples are the, of, and, to, in, is, you. So at the beginning of your child's reading journey, they're not always going to have the knowledge to tap out some of those words. And as they gain more phonics knowledge, then they are able to tap them out and they are decodable. Of course, there are some words that are not decodable. And so we've learned a new way to kind of try to explain those words. We used to say they were just trick words or that they didn't follow the rules, but we started doing something new. And I really have enjoyed doing this with my class this year. And I know Mrs. James has as well. So we start to point out that the part of the decodable words, that there's a part that's not decodable, or there's a part that is decodable. And so we refer to the irregular part, or the part that doesn't really follow the rule, as the heart part. And for example, the word that was begins and ends with regular phonemic sounds, because we know that W makes the W sound and S can also make the Z sound. In first grade, they learned that. We haven't learned that in kindergarten yet. And then the sound in was, that middle part is made by the letter A. And so we call that the heart part, because that's the part that doesn't follow any rules. You just have to remember that by heart. And so we do still refer to these as trick words because they can be a little bit tricky, but we are starting to explain them as also heart words as well, and sight words.
The research behind this, and this may be on the next slide, but I forget. What we're doing here, instead of just seeing and memorizing, and we do some of that. This is orthographic mapping. And what this does is it takes those regular parts. It's a completely different part of your brain that learns it this way. And you have a much greater capacity to learn words by mapping those regular parts of the words and memorizing the heart part, the irregular part of the word. You're going to have a much greater sight word vocabulary. And one thing that we had talked about and somehow didn't make it into this slide was everybody's sight word vocabulary is different. My sight word vocabulary has words like orthographic in it because I know that word. I read it all the time. If you're not a teacher, you probably don't have orthographic as part of your sight word vocabulary. I know a doctor's sight word vocabulary would completely baffle me. I wouldn't be able to read it. I'd be picking apart those words. And a first grader sight word vocabulary is and, my, play, little, friend, things like that.
All right. So when you think about learning to read, most people do think about phonics or trying to sound words out. And of course, phonics, this does explain sort of the relationship between the letters, which we mentioned before, called graphemes, and the sounds that they make, which is phonemes. And this can be either individually or, like Mrs. James mentioned before, sometimes the letters are in blends or what we call digraphs. And so we want our students, when they're done to learning all of these phonics or phonemes, to be able to quickly and accurately recognize the letters of the alphabet and the sounds that they make. Of course, in kindergarten, we're pretty much talking about 26 letters and the ones that then later combine to make 44 sounds. As I was saying before, so in kindergarten, we learn all the letters of the alphabet and we learn the short vowel sounds. So A or A is an apple, I is an itch. If you've got a kindergartner, you're probably hearing these. We do vowel stretches every day. We do A, apple, I, and we stretch them out. And so we're trying to make sure that they've really got those vowel sounds ingrained because the vowels are truly the part that most kids really struggle with the most. But we do focus on the short sounds. We have just in the last few weeks started introducing some of the long sounds and talking about it. And then we always try to surprise Mrs. James that we're learning how to mark some of them and they get excited that they're doing something that first graders are doing. And then in kindergarten, they also learn what we call digraphs. And so we've got 5 digraphs, and that's the WH whistle wh, and the SH ship sh, and the CH chin ch, and the TH thumb th, and the CK sock k. And then Mrs. James, I'll let you.
So now in first grade, we review all of that pretty quickly at the beginning of the year. And then we work on consonant blends and digraphs again. And what we spend a lot of time working on glued sounds like am, an, all, because if you were to tap out all, it's owl. If you were to tap out am, it's atom. That the M and the N kind of warp the sound. So we just teach it all as one sound. AM says am, an says an, ing says ing, unk says unk, not unk says unk. We teach it as one. We learn 2 of the 6 syllable types. We learn about prefixes and suffixes and vowel teams. And in the same way that Mrs. Sutphin says, well, we're going to teach you this, even though it's first grade. I say, we're going to teach you this, even though it's second grade. So you can surprise Mrs. Gallimore. And we just, it just keeps on going up. In a structured phonics program, the children learn all 6 syllable types. They learn the rules and the exceptions of the English language, and they become experts at breaking down words, both to read them and then to get their meaning. And it goes on. We teach this from kindergarten through 3rd grade. And in 3rd grade, it's more of a focus on Greek and Latin roots, prefixes and suffixes, and the morphology of words, using those little bits to find out the meaning of the words. And we do it even in 1st grade. We learn that means basically someone who, a painter, someone who paints, a baker, someone who bakes. We learn that an S, a suffix S at the end of a noun is plural. A suffix S at the end of a verb is present tense. And all of those little bits of knowledge come together so that when they find an unknown word, they can kind of break it down and get the meaning, not just what the word is.
All right. So this is Foundations. And I think we try to pull this up here. I don't know. I guess we can kind of try to explain this to you and talk about this.
What's the next slide? I feel like
let me look at what our next slide is and see if it, there we go. See, we started this.
You're going to have to click a few more.
Yep. Okay. So let me just explain this. So this is Foundations and this is our handwriting program. And this is what we were talking about earlier. And so, really one of the things that, again, as Mrs. Jane was saying before, we really want to make sure that that letter recognition is so immediate, so automatic, but also that they know a specific way to make each of those letters and that it is muscle memory. So this is our Foundations. I guess we're going to call it dry erase board. That's what they have. This is the teacher part of it. There we go. So in kindergarten through 3rd grade, we use this really explicit structured phonics program, and it is called Wilson Foundations. And I will tell you that Mrs. James was the one that was like, hey, let's look into this program. Let's start doing this.
I really think it was Mrs. Sutphin.
Well, what I'm going to say, though, is that once she said it, I was like, oh, yeah, I've seen this before. It is awesome because I have a daughter that has dyslexia. And this is what her teachers, when she received special instruction at school to help her with reading, this is what they used in helping her to get caught back up with her because of her dyslexia. So I love this program because it is so, and it says Foundations, but really what it means is foundational because it provides such a strong foundation for these kids. And so this program is used for 30 minutes. Sometimes we get to 45 minutes every day. The focus for us is on letters and the letter sounds. And then we really strongly emphasize the handwriting. And so we teach this handwriting in a really specific way to form the letters. It helps the children learn to quickly and legibly what we call write the letters. And I very specifically tell them, we do not draw letters. We draw pictures, we write letters. And so we really try to make sure that we use that language, because when we write, we're going to follow these specific directions about how we form a letter. And so you want me to go ahead and explain?
No, I think click one more page because we get to talking about why we do.
Okay.
the and
Yep.
the,
Okay.
I
So,
think.
yep, we'll see. So when they're really fluent in these handwriting skills, this is what Mrs. James was talking about earlier with the stove burner. Their minds are free to work on the creative aspect of what they want to write, and they don't have to focus exclusively on how do I make these letters. And I can tell you, this is something I really observed with my own daughter. Like I said before, she struggled with dyslexia, and so, okay, what sentence am I going to write? How do I make these? How do I spell these words? Okay, well, now I tapped it out and I know how to spell the word. Oh goodness, how do I write these letters? And so when they're having to think through all of those steps, it really becomes overwhelming. And so, let's see.
Nope.
Yep. Okay. So
Okay,
I don't,
well,
we
do
can,
this.
Mrs. James can demonstrate while I explain. We'll kind of
So-
do it this way. So when we are learning these letters, we go through a list of explanations for each of them. Yep. So you can see on Mrs. James's board, this is the board that the children used to write with. The other one was an example of what I wrote with, or what I have my board that I write on. So they've got what we call a skyline, plain line, grass line, and then the worm line. And so as we give these directions on how to write letters, and I'll go ahead and give you an example.
And I'm going to, if there's one thing that you take away from this, never, ever, ever does a letter start at the worm line
or at the grass line.
or the grass line.
Yeah.
No letters start at the bottom. Letters always start at the top or the middle. Always, always, always. That is one of the hardest habits to break.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So just an example, when we're teaching letter B, and one of the reasons why I love this is reversals are so common, and it's not unusual at all for students to make reversals. But this is sort of the solution to that. So we teach letter B. B is a skyline letter. B starts at the skyline, goes down to the grass line, trace back up to the plain line, and curve around to the grass line. And so B.
And then they say B, bat, B. So we're reinforcing the letter formation and the sound it makes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. James.
Sorry.
That's okay. And so we're a team. And so then if we want to talk about letter D is a much more specific letter. And Mrs. James is trying to do this backwards, so bear with her.
I'm getting good.
So letter D is not a skyline letter, even though that line is going to go all the way up. It starts at the plain line, and it is very much what we call a plain line round letter, which plain line round letters, all of them start like the letter C. So we're going to say start at the plain line, curve around, fly back on the plain line, go down and around and curve all the way back up to the skyline and trace straight back down to the grass line. And so those specific words that we practice over and over and over help the kids gain that muscle memory and that just memory in general of this is what this letter looks like and this is what this letter looks like.
And I think one of the most important letters they learn is the letter C, because the letter C is also the letter A. I'm not doing very well here, but the letter G, the letter D, what else is it? The letter O.
So let's see, COAGDS, which you wouldn't think, and then Q, and then E is a special letter, but
and Q, it's the same thing. And if they're really fluent on making that C, they're going to automatically go that direction to make your A and your G and your D, which are letters that get reversed quite a lot.
Yeah. All right. So, and then as we were saying before, so I think let's see, I want to make sure, I think we did part of this. Okay, so we did talk about Mrs. James talked about the morphology. That's okay. We've been through this so many times. We kind of skip around a little bit. So it is really important, and I'm really proud of the fact that we teach handwriting. I think that we see this in our students and what a difference it makes for them. I know this year in particular, we've had a lot of students that, have come from different schools, and just to see the difference from students that have done foundations and have learned handwriting and the ease with which they are able to write and form those letters, it really is very evident.
We get a lot of, for kids who haven't learned handwriting, especially coming into first grade, we get a lot of approximations of letters. Like this would be an N and this would be an R. And to us, that's what we call drawing the letters. It's not a fluent thing. It's not a one stroke. And it seems like it's not a lot more to do that. But when you're writing a lot of words, it is a lot more. And it takes up more time and more energy and more brain power.
Well, and also, so then the next thing I was going to say is that in third grade, students also with this foundations program begin to learn cursive handwriting. And as you probably know or have heard, you know, cursive writing is actually going to be secret code very soon because most people, my own high school age student, can't read cursive anymore. They don't know cursive. They weren't taught cursive. They didn't learn it. And so it's been discontinued in most schools. And we really feel like this is a really important part of preparing students for higher education. I can assure you, I've got a daughter in college right now in nursing school, and she really didn't get strong cursive skills. And she came to St. Catherine's a little too late, and and so she tells me all the time, "Oh my goodness, mom, it's so hard to keep up with writing notes fast enough." And I'm like, "It's because you don't know cursive." And so, you know, there's just something important about that ability to write cursive. It's much faster. It's an easier way to take notes, and multiple studies have shown that students who take notes by hand can retain more of the information than students who take notes using a device like a laptop or a tablet, even if it's, you know, they're the ones typing it in. And I think that this way of learning to write letters in foundations really lends itself to the ease of then learning cursive handwriting as well. I think that was supposed to be your slide. Sorry, and I talked on it.
Oh, that's okay.
That's
Well,
okay.
you can go ahead.
Okay. All right. So now we want to find out, okay, I want to read with my child. They're telling me how important reading is. So what's the best book for me to read with my child? Well, the best book that you can read with your child is the one that your child says, "Mommy, read this book." Whatever book, or, you know, daddy too, whatever book it is that your child is interested in, they are going to gain fluency by reading books that are at their grade level, but that are even above their level or even below their reading level. They're going to gain knowledge from hearing books over and over and over again, even if you are sick of reading that Powerpuff Girls book. They are going to, you know, they're going to get something from it. They gain this vocabulary by being read books that are definitely above their reading level. And so you want to make sure that the most important thing you can do to support their journey as a reader is just reading to them. Even in you start to think first grade, okay, well, now they can read. I want them reading on their own. Absolutely. Have your child reading on their own. That's wonderful. We want them to be practicing those skills. But there is something still so very important about you reading an interesting story to them. I know Mrs. James, I love one of the things that she does. She reads some really great books with her kids, like when they come in from recess, Super Fudge and these chapter books. And
Ramona the Pest is a
yeah,
big
the
favorite.
kids are just so thrilled to sit there and simply listen to these stories and to learn them. I was so grateful in fourth grade. My daughter, as I mentioned, she really struggled with her dyslexia and learning to read. And her teacher started reading, oh my goodness, what's the books about that? Percy Jackson. Started reading the Percy Jackson series books in class out loud to them. And my daughter, even though she struggled with dyslexia and with reading herself, she has an amazing vocabulary, probably because her mom talks too much, but she has this really great vocabulary. And so she was able to sit there, though, and listen to these stories and take it all in and really absorbed a lot of information from that. And her teacher at the end was like, "Oh my goodness, Caitlin was the one that, you know, passed the test with these flying colors." But I really think it was due to some of the vocabulary that she has, but also just that, you know, time and time again that we spent reading books together and having conversations together. Your child can also just learn to be a reader by simply reading books with you. If your child doesn't pick up it immediately, please don't worry about that. The time that you're going to read with your child, that's building the vocabulary and it's setting this really strong foundation. And, you know, I know for my daughter early on, because reading was so difficult for her, she was, "I don't like reading. I don't want to read." So I would just read to her. And I think that really helped her to still love reading, to still build that vocabulary. And so it's really important to do that. But also, then we got to a point where we would take turns reading. I'd read a page and she'd read a page, and she could start to see that love and enjoyment that we got out of reading books.
And please don't think that your child needs to come to kindergarten reading. They do not. We will teach them how to read. That's our job. That's what we do. Um, but you can instill in them a love of reading, a love of hearing stories, a love of learning about new things. That comes from you. We'll teach them how to read. Don't worry about that.
All right. So this is, I love this visual graphic here. Why read 20 minutes at home? So student A reads 20 minutes per day, or when we say student A reads 20 minutes per day, that means mom or dad might
Yes,
read,
it really
and it
does.
really does at this young age, means that mom or dad is maybe reading with them 20 minutes a day. So that ends up being 3,600 minutes per school year and 1,800,000 words per year. Look at that score on that ACT or that SAT score. That's a 90th percentile on those scores. Look at student C, they read for 1 minute per day. The difference, they're in the 10th percentile of those standardized tests. And I'd love to tell you that those standardized tests really don't mean anything, but I can assure you that myself and Mrs. James, who've just had students that are applying to go to college, unfortunately, they mean way too much. My daughter was trying to go to out of state school, and that one more point means the difference in out of state tuition being in state tuition, and in state tuition even being a big scholarship. So those standardized tests really do mean a lot.
And above and beyond the test scores, which the tests are important, that's fine, but a larger vocabulary is going to make you sound like you know what you're talking about. Having that vocabulary is going to enable you to, as you get older, to read more books. The more you read, the more you can read. It's going to let you find out what you're interested in. When we're doing our core knowledge, which is our language arts program, it's so interesting to see. It's kind of opening these little doors of, oh, I'm interested in that. Oh, I'm interested in that. Oh, I'm interested in that. And having this ability to read really opens a world of knowledge for you.
All right. So after you read with your child, this is the part that, I'm hoping you can take something away from this part. Being able to read the words is, of course, really important. And like I said, we're going to work on teaching your child how to do that. But the important part is the understanding. And so, like I said, we call this the reading comprehension. When we finish a book in here in kindergarten and first grade, we are going to say, oh, that's not the end of the story. So we want to make sure that you're talking with your child about the story afterwards. Who are the characters in the story? Where did the story take place? What was the setting? What was the problem in the story? Was there more than one problem? How did they solve the problem? Can your child retell the story in order and sequence those events? What happened at the beginning? What happened at the middle? What happened at the end? So all of these are some skills that we do work on here, but they're definitely something that as a parent, if you want to talk to your child about the book afterwards, even though you might be really, really tired and just say, let's go to bed now, then take 2 minutes and try to have a conversation about some of those things. So, all right. So Mrs. James, this is you. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I love to talk.
It's okay. So we want to talk a little bit about reading difficulties. It certainly isn't our focus, but we want to mention it. For some children, reading can be more challenging. Not everybody learns at the same pace. Some children, and I think we're going to really see this next year, are older than other children in the class, because I know some children normally would have gone to kindergarten this year and their parents said, oh, let's wait a year because this year's really confusing. Some children have other interests. They are just so into baseball, football, soccer that reading isn't their thing right now. If you're concerned about your child's reading progress, here's some things you might want to consider.
So a couple of things that we Jennifer, Mrs. James and I, Jennifer, we went and she mentioned to the Hill Center. And so these were some of the things that they kind of talked about there that, sometimes when you see a child with some reading delays or difficulties, you might notice that some of these things accompany those things, or these might be some signs that maybe you're going to have a child that might have some of those things. And I can tell you as a parent who, had a child with reading difficulties, definitely a lot of these were true for my child. So first of all, when is your child's birthday? Child who turns 5 in September is almost a full year younger than that child in the same class who's turning 6 in October. And you think about, oh, it's just a year, it's just a couple of months. Think about when your child was a baby, the difference from birth to 6 months. What did they learn? How to pick up food and feed themselves, how to crawl, how to, mimic sounds, all those little things. There's a huge, huge development difference between a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. And sometimes we take it for granted that they're all kind of that age, but there really is a big difference in those ages. So the next thing is delayed speech. If your child had trouble with speech, definitely that is something that it may just cause them to have problems forming some of those sounds. And then as they're trying to learn to tap out those words, definitely some of those can, lead to other learning difficulties. This is one that was very obvious for my daughter, mixing up sounds in multisyllabic words. So these are the things that you say, oh, it's so cute when they do this. But, when it's biscotti or aminal or hecalopter or calipitter, those words that they sound so cute when they're saying them when they're little. But sometimes that is sort of that brain organization working up there, phonemic awareness and being able to move those sounds around. So lots of ear infections that really can affect a child's ability as they are learning those sounds, and it changes the sounds for them as they're learning them when they're really little. And so definitely something to be aware of. This was another one true for my daughter. Confusion over left versus right, and definitely the words like before and after, today and tomorrow, first and next. When those words are kind of difficult for your child to learn, it really is kind of a sign that they use the other side of their brain a little bit more. And so we have to help them make some new pathways to the other side of their brain that will help them become strong readers. Even when there's very familiar with lots of stories containing rhyming words like the cat in the hat, does your child have a hard time making rhyming words? So tonight, I hope you're going to, or maybe tomorrow, because it might be getting past their bedtime, ask them if they can make some of those rhyming words. And if they can't, start practicing that, because that's definitely a skill they're really going to need. Does your child struggle with the names of the letters or the sounds that they make? I would say if they're before kindergarten, don't start stressing about that. But once we get into kindergarten, that is certainly an expectation that we want to start really, have a solid acquisition of what is that letter and what is the sound that it makes.
By first grade, definitely.
Absolutely. And then does your child have difficulty writing the alphabet in order in first grade? That's something that they really practice with great fluency. And as Mrs. James loved to say, automaticity. We want them to be able to write those letters in the right order quickly in haste. And so is there someone in your immediate family, adult or child, who struggles with reading? And this was a very easy one for me. My poor mother struggled with reading her whole life, and unfortunately was surrounded with teachers that just wanted to help her all the time. And then when it came along in my daughter, we were able to see that, yes, this dyslexia was absolutely something that was hereditary.
Mrs. Sefton and I have been in countless conferences where people say, oh, no, never. No, we're all great readers, no problem. And then towards the end, someone inevitably says, I remember when they used to always pull me out during reading class for extra help. That's what we're talking about. That's the thing.
Yeah. So of course, if you have any of these concerns, this does not mean that your child has a learning disability. These are just some things for you to watch for and be aware of. If it does mean that it's a little extra time, to work on reading with them, that's okay. This might be beneficial that we're recognizing those things early. And that's why we mention these things, because there's some great things for you to kind of start practicing and trying out right now. But if you do have any of those concerns, especially I would say like the speech or the hearing or the ear infections, talk to your pediatrician about those. Make sure that you've had a hearing screening, that you've got speech screenings in the works.
I can't remember if this is on the next slide, so it probably is. But when it comes to speech, the earlier you can get it addressed, the better it's going to be for your child. I know that in a private school, well, I know for us, we don't have a speech therapist on staff. However, your child, if they go here, is eligible for speech through the county, but it can take a while to get the wheels rolling on that and to get everything put in place. So the earlier you can get on board with that, the better it's going to be for your child.
Especially right now, I'm going through the process with a student. It is extremely difficult with COVID. So especially if you've got a younger child, look to start addressing that now. So,
and again, this might be on the next slide, but I'm thinking about it now, so I'll talk about it. What that looks like, because this is what it looked like for me. My son had lots and lots and lots of speech therapy. He didn't start talking till he was 3. He is 19. He hasn't shut up since he was 3. But he would talk to maybe grandma, and she'd turn to me and look at me, and then I'd translate. Or he'd talk to his dad, and then I'd translate. If you're kind of a translator for your child on a regular basis, that's an indicator that speech therapy might be something that could help with that situation.
And then I just love this resource. Mrs. James and I both, like I said, have learned a lot about different learning difficulties. But there's just a lot of great information at this website for Bright Solutions for Dyslexia, if you want to look up anything more about that. And then there's also another website for learning disabilities. And so, of course, any of these things, if you're seeing these in your children, it does not mean that there's a learning disability. And Mrs. James and I are not doctors, and we would not pretend to diagnose anybody with a learning disability. But we have learned a lot in the past few years about what some of those things look like. And so we just want to mention it to you because it's better to kind of know ahead, be looking for those things and looking for any problems ahead of time.
And for a child who might have dyslexia, the way that it is recommended to teach a child with dyslexia to read is the way we teach all children to read here. So this is actually a really great place, a really great program, and it catches those kids and gives them the support and the foundation they need to be able to read.
And I know that I don't want you to all feel like you need to rush to write down any of these because we are going to put this presentation, sorry, that can come up that word, presentation online. So you'll be able to have access to any of these. If anybody's interested, if you email us, I can give you a printout, of course, too, of this presentation that we did tonight, so you could have any of this information. But anyway, these are some other really great resources. As I mentioned before,
these are the nerdy resources. If this is really interesting to you, and it is to us, this is the place to go.
And so especially the Natalie Wexler, The Knowledge Gap, this was a book study that Mrs. James did on her own this summer. And it was so fascinating. And it's what really, really just fueled us on the science of reading and this learning about the knowledge and the vocabulary and adding in that science and social studies for your students and how important those things were. And then, of course, last of all, if you're not already enrolled in our school, St. Catherine of Siena Catholic School is currently meeting in person, which we're so grateful for. Can't tell you how happy and meaningful it is for us to be in person with these dear, sweet children. It makes a world of difference. And so we are so grateful that we've been here with 0 COVID cases in person, being able to learn in person every single day. We've been so excited about it. And so open enrollment is available for grades pre-K through 8, and it's occurring now. If you're interested in taking a tour or learning more about our school or enrolling for the school year, you do want to call Ivy, and that's her email address and her phone number. And I'm sorry, Mrs. James, that was supposed to be your slide. But and so anyway, we just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We would love to open this up to any questions if you have any. I know we've talked your ears off. I hope that this was something meaningful for you and you didn't just go like, wow, these 2 nerdy teachers just loaded us down with a whole bunch of crazy information and that was insanity. But Mrs. Schwartz was like, are people really going to stay for an hour and listen to this? I'm like, well, we hope so, but maybe not. Maybe they're turned off. What I don't know. But anyway, hopefully we gave you some great information to help you in the coming years for your students and learning. We hope that we get to have the joy and opportunity to be your children's teachers, and we look forward to that blessing and that opportunity. So anyway, just want to open it up. If anybody of you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask any questions if you have any. And I'm going to make it so I can try to see everybody. Hold on, let me see. Okay, yeah, I don't see anything. No. Okay.
I don't know if this is the right place to ask, and if it's not,
it's always the right
absolutely
place.
fine. But I know that our kids have to do. Oh, I see Megan has a question too. I know our incoming kindergartners have to do an assessment. Can you just tell us a little bit about what happens in that assessment? I don't remember.
No, it's okay. That's absolutely a great question, and I appreciate you asking that. We did go over this a little bit in the we did a kindergarten readiness meeting a little while back. So if you saw that, I'm sorry, because we'll kind of go over that a little bit. So the assessment that we use is called the developmental readiness or something like that.
DOR.
But anyway, essentially what it does is this is an assessment that says to us, okay, we're going to look at how old is your child. Your child is 5 years old and 1 month. And then it's going to give us this book that is amazing. And it has all of these different answers for this is what a 4-year-old and 2-month child does. This is what a 4-year-old and 6-month-old child. This is a 4-year-old and 8-month. And it literally goes month by month, year by year. And it gives us developmental norms for each of those ages. And so this assessment allows us to look at fine motor skills, gross motor skills, language, vocabulary, problem solving, what am I forgetting? Patterns and like visual awareness. Do they know letters and numbers?
It is not, here, read this book.
Yes.
Here, write these words. It's not like that. And it's going to give us, I'm going to interrupt you.
That's okay. Go right ahead.
Developmental age. And we're not looking for you to be developmentally 10 years old.
Please don't send your 10-year-old to my kindergarten class.
5 years old. Then we're looking for you to be around 4.5 to 5.5, that general ballpark. if you are 5 years old and your developmental assessment says you're working at an age of about 2.5, then that's probably something we're going to need to talk about. But I will tell you, you already know. If you have that kind of a deficit, you already know something like that, and we're probably already talking anyway. Um, Almost every child that comes in and we play games, we build towers with blocks, we draw some pictures,
We hop, skip, jump,
we
throw.
ask some silly questions like, what should you do if your crayon breaks? And then there's different kind of scales of answers. If your answer is cry, well, that's kind of a less mature answer. If your answer is you can just take the paper off, it's more mature answer. If your answer is tell mommy, it's kind of in the middle. And it's questions like that, and we look at the answers, and there's been so much research done. They have tested this on lots and lots and lots of kids, and you get this general age. And I would say almost all of the children, I mean, really all the children, almost all of the children that we've had come in and take this assessment, we've said, well, come on in. And a couple of times we've said, you know what? How about next year? And particularly, this is with children who are just right up on that age, right up on the cutoff date.
And I would say, and I had this conversation with a parent yesterday who was kind of upset that we're doing this assessment. And I loved being able to give them this answer. And I guess it's what I want to say to you is, this assessment is not just to say, is your child ready to come to kindergarten? This assessment helps us to answer, are we going to be able to meet the needs of your child this coming year? And that's kind of what it is, because we know what our abilities are to teach here and what we offer. And if for some reason we saw that there were some big delays or there's something like that, we're a small school. We don't have a lot of resources, and we're not able to offer everything that every child needs. And it would be unethical of us to accept a child who has great deficits and we're not able to really facilitate what they need for best learning. And that's rarely ever the case, but we want to make sure that we are going to be able to provide an adequate and really exceptional education for your child. It is not anything that any parent should worry about, because really this just speaks to the God-given way that your child develops. And that's what this test tells us is, are they sort of in the average norm of whatever their age is for right now? And we're looking at, are they going to look like they're going to be ready to be at 5 years old when we start kindergarten? And that's really what it gives us. It's nothing to prepare for. It's nothing to worry about. And the only other thing I would say to you is, if for some reason at the end of this test, we come to you and we say, you know what, it looks like your child might be testing a little bit behind what their age is, and we think it might be a really great idea to allow them the gift of time and to have an extra year of preschool, please take that as the gift that it is. Because one, I have had this happen. So this is my 11th year teaching kindergarten, but our 6th year of giving this assessment. And I would tell you that before we started doing this assessment, year after year, there would be kids that made the cutoff and they would come in and they just weren't ready for kindergarten. And, kindergarten is not what it was when I went, and probably not what it was when you went to kindergarten. Kindergarten's a lot more like first grade these days. There's no naps. We're not just singing songs all day. We're writing, we're eventually writing sentences. We're reading books, and it's a lot of intensive learning. And, socially, there's a lot going on. Emotionally, we're looking for them to become independent little people. And so all of those things together, we want to make sure that they're going to come in and they're going to feel like a superstar, a rock star when they leave kindergarten. That's the person that we want to help build up. And if for some reason they come in and they're not quite ready, what an awful thing to make somebody come into school and, oh, this is so hard and I can't do this. And it's a misery every day. And as a parent and as a teacher, I don't want that for my students. And I know you don't want that for your students. And so I've had parents that we've said to them, would you please consider, allowing your child this extra year? And time and again, there's at least 4 or 5 students that we've asked that of. And I've got one of those students in my class this year. And I cannot tell you that every time I see this mother in person, she says to me, thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing my child to have that extra year of time, because what a gift it was. Because I can see right now He loves coming to school. He's
a
excited
rock
about
star.
school, and he is. He's amazing right now, and he loves learning, and he's just enthralled in it. Whereas before, it just wasn't his thing. He wasn't ready for it. And so this assessment really gives us a great window into who's ready to come in, who's excited about, learning. And I myself, I had a struggle with that. My daughter's birthday was a week before the cutoff. And of course, I didn't know that she had dyslexia at the time, but she started kindergarten and she hated school and it was a misery and she hated reading. And this is, heartbreaking. I'm a teacher. How does my kid not love learning to read and not learn, reading and just all these things? It was awful. And we struggled and it damaged our relationship and it was hard. And so finally, then I let her go and have that extra year. And oh my goodness, not only was I grateful for it that next year, but when I was really grateful for it was when she was in high school and she was the oldest kid in her class. And socially and emotionally, she was a leader amongst her peers and she felt comfortable with who she was socially and emotionally. And she's in college right now and she calls me all the time and says, Mom, thanks for being a good mom to me, because somehow I'm one of the few people that has my head on straight. There's a whole lot of people around here that don't. So, just a mom brag moment, but it means a lot to those kids to go forward with confidence and excitement to learn.
I think a lot of parents worry about what if my child fails? And so I'll give you a couple of examples of things we ask and some answers that were like, oh, this is a red flag. One of the things we do, they're called action items. And we say, tell me something that sits. They might say a dog sits. Tell me something that cries, a baby. Tell me something that runs. Hands down, they're going to say a cheetah.
Everyone says cheetah.
A cheetah. But very rarely, tell me something that runs. My feet are fast when I run. Tell me something that cries. I was sad yesterday. They're giving us approximate answers that kind of have to do with what we're asking. They're not answering the questions we're asking. And it's those kinds of things that are like, oh, this might be a language disorder. This might be, and we don't know, but it's a red flag for us to say, hey, we need to look further into this. That's what we're looking for. And I know Patrick. I've had conversations with Patrick, for the most part, if it's something that's really going to be a big red flag for us, like I said, you probably already think. Oh,
most likely preschool teacher, or you're already aware of some of those things. So does that answer your question?
Totally. Thank you so much.
Okay. What I mostly want to say to you is please don't worry about it. Please don't worry about it, because your kid's going to be great. No matter what, we're going to make sure that they get what they need when they need it appropriately.
Right. When they need
and
it,
that's what this assessment helps us to know. And I don't stress about it. Don't feel like you got to study all the letters or numbers. Please don't do that with your child. When you bring them here, tell them you're going to get to go play some games and do some fun stuff with Mrs. James and Mrs. Sutphin.
And they only have to know like 2 letters.
Yeah.
The academic bar is really low.
Yeah. No, you're good.
Fine.
You're good.
Fine.
So
Mrs. Doyle has a question.
Yep. Mrs. Doyle.
It says, what can I do over the summer between kindergarten and first grade to keep skills that have been learned fresh? Is this Mary Claire's mom?
Yes.
Yeah. I love Mary Claire. I come in. This is my second semester. This is my time to come visit kindergarten a lot and see everybody. And she shows me everything she's done. We work on drawn, everything she's written. What a sweetheart.
We work on a lot of relationship building around here. I try to go and visit as much as possible. It hasn't happened as much as I'd like it to so far this year, but I try to get to know the preschoolers. Mrs. James tries to get to know the first graders. And, even if it's on the playground, we might call a child over. Hey, this is Mrs. James. Yeah. Do you know her? She loves first grade. I can't wait for you to be her teacher. Because that's one of the beauties of our school is that it's so little and they get to know one another. The teachers get to know them. And
we read a story at the beginning of the year. It's called First Day Jitters, and it's about being nervous for the first day of school. And they never get it. They're all like, why? It's just you. I've known you for a year. So, but definitely, and it's harder with COVID, but on a non-COVID year, and maybe this will turn into a non-COVID year, I would say go to the library. They have loads of programs there where you can, go and I used to take my kids. They had one where they'd read books about dinosaurs, and then you'd get a little chocolate chip cookie and you'd excavate all the chocolate chips out of your cookie. And it's just little school-like things that kind of kept you in that frame of mind of sitting and listening to a story, then going and doing the activity, you know, that they tell you to do, as opposed to just running around. Definitely read with your child. If you can, I don't want to put monetary things on people, but if you can take trips, if you can go places, talk to your kids. One of the examples, vocabulary examples I gave, and I didn't give it on this one, when you talk about words, have them give you synonyms. And one of the examples I use is when you see the trash truck and it's trash, and you say trash, what's another word for trash? And how many words can you think of that mean trash? Junk and garbage and refuse. And, you know, build that vocabulary and you use different words. Don't be afraid of big words. Kids love big words. And read with your child. Read with your child. Read with your child. If you want to do some writing or some handwriting, certainly dry erase boards. Now, I think you've given them
I think
one.
All my students have a laminated paper that's like a dry erase board. I would definitely say that would probably be a great thing to do, is practice writing those letters over the summer. So they, you know, that muscle memory becomes stronger, and tapping out some CVC words, you know, those consonant, vowel, consonant words. Just keep practicing those, writing those. I think that would probably be really good.
Dry erase is great because those mistakes go right away.
Yeah, it's easy to erase. There's no struggle with that paper and eraser.
With making marks on paper. And fine motor activities, Play-Doh and moon sand or paint and all the things you probably don't want in your house are great activities for them. And let them have scissors.
Yes, please.
I know it can mean a trip to get your hair fixed, but letting them use scissors really builds muscles that you don't build in many other ways. And they'll need them because we do a lot of cutting and gluing. And
yeah, I definitely would encourage those preschool families that are watching tonight. Please over the summer, give your kids some coupons out of the paper. Let them cut coupons, even if you don't actually intend to use them. Anything, let them cut stuff out.
I give them, if you still have them from Christmas, toy catalogs and say, oh, let's make a wish list.
Yeah.
And cut out stuff you like from the toy catalog and glue it onto a piece of paper. I didn't say get list. It's a wish list. And so things like that, just the fine motor skills are really important. And I'll say this, my children are 18 and 19. So I didn't have this struggle. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, limit tablet time, limit phone time. It's just a different set of skills and it can be so addictive to them. Turning the pages of books, reading books, drawing and coloring and cutting in the physical real world has so many more benefits. If your child's listening to a book on a tablet, that's great, but it can't compare to sitting and reading with you, because when they notice that the car in that picture looks like Uncle Tommy's car, the tablet can't have a discussion about that
and make those connections that you can make with them.
That you can make. They need that real person right there with
and there's
them.
also something really important to be said about the physical contact that occurs between when a child is, you know, sitting next to you or sitting in your lap, and they see that love that you have for them and the love for reading and that connection right there. That's a huge connection for them too. So definitely encourage you just as much time as you can sitting and reading with them. And I know when you have other children and things like that, that can sometimes be tough, but if you can carve out 10 minutes for that a day, you know, 20 minutes be great. But that would definitely be the most important thing.
It can, even if you have older children. I remember when my son, there was a book, it was Harry Potter. I said, oh, you would love this book. And he said, nah, I don't want to read it. Nah, I don't want to read it. And so I took it into my daughter's room and I read her the first couple pages really loudly. Good night, sweetie. And then my son comes tiptoeing. Where'd you put that book? And then over the next 2 months, you didn't see him without a book in his hands reading this book. But, you know, even for your older kids to see you reading and hear you reading, I mean, it has value all the way through.
Anybody else have a question that we can answer? Yes, Janie.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you for this. I started crying the minute you two started explaining all this, because I see it in Claire, everything Miss James is saying, this is what I'm listening to with Claire, and to know it's even starting in kindergarten, it's very, very, very impressive.
Okay.
As far as the handwriting, if we want to go ahead and boost their handwriting, and muscle memory is so important. When you get those books, like even at the dollar store, and the first page does actually show how to do it, is that the correct way? Is that the standard?
It's
I
going
don't
to
wanna
look a
teach-
little, it's
you
going
know-
to look a little different than what we're doing. If you are
Okay.
interested and that's something that you want to work on, I would be happy
Mhm.
to print out some directions for you and pass
That
them
would be-
along to Mrs. Burns. And that would be something that you can
That's
work
great.
on the summer. I'd be happy to give you even a dry erase mat. And you know, that's something that you could practice on, and I'm more than happy to do that for anybody. So I would just
Thank you.
email me so I don't forget.
What if
Okay.
we made several of those and put them in bins out on the table right outside the doors? And anyone who wants some is certainly welcome to come and get some dry erase mats and the directions. And I think you already have the directions in Claire's binder.
Okay. So all right, that's true. I could use hers. I did.
Make several copies
Yeah.
and put them out there and take as many as you want.
Yeah.
Pass them around.
Okay.
So, but it's
That
it's
is
the same
great.
thing that you're doing in
Yeah.
first grade, those directions,
Yep,
you
same
know, to
thing.
form the letters. So happy to
Okay.
hear any of that for you. So just email me if there's something that you want. But yeah, we can make some copies and put them outside, and anything you want to grab, you're welcome to. Okay.
And
Okay, because I see Joseph can write his name, but he's doing it incorrectly. He'll start, like you said, at the bottom.
Right. And I will tell you, it's funny because I almost want to say to, you know, 4-year-olds or to Mrs. Burns, say, please just don't teach them to write, because sometimes I feel like we're just, you know, trying to go backwards sometimes, and they break it pretty easily. But I usually have to say to them, you know, I say, well, that was the preschool way to do it.
we do
And-
throw preschool under the bus quite a bit.
Yeah,
We
and
say,
so
"Oh,
we're
that's
like,
how pre-K
This is
kids
how the
do it."
kindergarten way
Right.
to do it is, you know, so kind of makes it feel exciting, but you know,
We kind of throw
Yes.
it under the bus.
Yeah.
I'll say, okay,
I hear you.
kindergarten, we
Yeah.
do this. But I have to tell you, Claire has the most beautiful handwriting I've ever seen.
You know, I don't know if it's a difference between a girl and a boy, but she was very interested in writing.
It is.
And like
a
in
difference in a
grade,
boy
she
and a
would
girl.
say, how do I write my name? And she would, so Joseph is throwing me, he has no interest.
Yeah. And sometimes that is just the way it is. But again,
Right,
we'll teach it.
Yep, no problem.
Great,
Yeah, we're
great.
happy to share this.
I'll-
And
I'll
Ms. Tran, I
try.
see your note as well. I'm happy to get one of those for you as well, those directions and those little work dry erase mats for you as well. Okay. Any
great.
other questions from anybody?
No, when can we get started? Can you take them in July?
Oh, we have a little battery recharge session in July that we need to kind of get psyched back up.
Oh.
And you know, I have to refreshen my freckles a little bit and get a little pool time. But then yes, I'll be right back, I
Oh.
promise, and ready to go.
It's very exciting. We see the kindergarten class when we pick up the preschoolers, and you feel the energy coming out of the kindergarten class. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. And like I said, you know, thank you. I see your note too, Mrs. Nold. Happy to get one of those out for you as well. Thank you. You know what? I hope that is what people see and hear when they're at our school, is the energy, the excitement, the love that we have for our students. How happy we are to be here. We love
Aw.
being here. I don't know if you get that or not, but me and Mrs. Jones,
Oh,
we kind of laugh
you
that
can-
we're the teacher nerds here, that like, who does this? Where they just sit around and want to talk to people about reading and how exciting and fun it
Well,
is. But
And what other job at the end of the day do all of your people around you come up to you and say, I love you. I love you.
yeah,
I love
Aw.
you. It's fantastic. I mean, every day. And it's such that's your recharge right there.
absolutely. Yes.
Well, you know, it really says a lot that in this time when we were not allowed in the school and we know nothing, this love is coming pouring out and we feel it. Like, it's not even that any of us are in there and seeing it. It's what's coming out. And that's what is really hitting me, that I'm feeling
you.
this and have zero contact.
Right. I appreciate that, because that is my hope and wish. And Mrs. James, I know too that,
It is. It's
you know, I was saying earlier, we had a little professional development thing that we did this morning, and I was just saying how much I miss being with our families. I miss all these times of us
Yeah,
being able to get together and do things. I mean, that was like one of my favorite parts about kindergarten, because I'm like, that's kind of my job, is to help all these families bond together and get to know each other. And I'm like, I miss it so much. So,
awesome.
yeah. So anyway,
Hopefully,
I don't want to keep everybody else. If you're welcome to stay, Ms. Jamin,
I
I'll
know.
talk to you all night long, but
No, you
don't, please don't feel
don't.
like you have to continue to stay on. If you have any more questions, we certainly want to answer your questions. Mrs. Johnson, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to share. So Jack Thomas was doing virtual learning for a couple of months after school had started, and he wouldn't even participate in when you would do Go Noodle. He would just like sit there and watch the Go Noodle because that's what he was accustomed to, just like sitting and being an observer. And we talk about, he wouldn't even do it for Footloose Fridays, and we talk about the Go Noodles. And last night, I don't even know what he was talking about or singing, but he was clapping it out, clap it out, whatever it was. Syllables. It sounded like he was
Syllable song for Blazer
Syllable
Fresh.
song.
and clapping it out and just so happy and so excited. And it just such a world of difference.
Yeah, it is. My heart breaks right now, for my own child included, for all of these kids that are out there virtually learning, because I don't know how you could quantitatively say what it is that these students are missing by not being able to be in person, but it is hurtful to my heart to think about what they must be missing. And for my own child, I see it, he's 17. You think, high schoolers, virtual learning should be fine for them. It's not. It's horrible. In that same vein, my heart also breaks because, and this PLC that we did this morning, this training was all about relationships and how do you build relationships with people. And I had a meeting with all of my child's teachers, meet the teacher. And I felt so awful for them because they said, we don't know what your child looks like. We know that your child looks like a Google Dot that has their initials on it. And to me, it is impossible to build a relationship with a Google Dot. And that is how you successfully teach a child, is to build a relationship with them and to get to know them and get them to know that you love them, and that, hopefully in turn they end up loving you. And so and my heart breaks for all these kids. I don't know what this world is going to be like if we can't get back to school soon. And I understand teachers being fearful and, not wanting to be in school, but oh my goodness,
Thank God we're in school
yeah,
every day.
every day. It is
And-
my greatest first blessing that I am thankful for.
I've recently had some kids go from virtual learning to in person. And within 2-3 days, I've seen them go from just observers to energetic, happy, big smiles, can't stop talking, so happy with their friends. It is night and day. And I would like to think that we do a pretty good job with virtual learning when we have to do it, but the two don't compare. They just don't compare.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, any other questions? Anything else anybody wanted to add? Well, I really thank you so much for indulging our teacher nerd side here and letting us share all of this information. We try to lay some really good groundwork for you. It helps us when your children are in our class to have this groundwork and this information. And we're just so grateful for the opportunity to teach these children. I tell my husband all the time how grateful I am to have this job and the blessing that I get to have every day to come in and be with these kids. And I know Mrs. James feels that way. And it's also my blessing to get to work with Mrs. James. I don't know if you guys know, she's
same
truly one of
thing.
the best teachers I know. So really grateful for that. And
We're a good team.
yeah, and we do.
We're
We
good team.
K1-2, we work really hard together, and we're trying to keep Mrs. Burns in on that loop too. We started to really involve her in our team meetings. So trying to make it a good team thing and just trying to keep on doing what we're doing. So hopefully we keep getting better at that, and hopefully you guys get to see the fruits of those labors. But anyway, we thank you for the blessing of allowing us to share this opportunity with your kids and your families. So, all right. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Enjoy your time. Thank you, Danny. Love you too.
Thank you.
And see you guys soon, and take care. Have a great night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
All right, thank you.